It is September, which means it is the month of love, which means I thought that there was no better time to talk about... What? Oh, that's February. Welcome back to All You Can Board, everyone. I am Dylan, and today I'm going to be talking about games that you can introduce on a first date. Now, the reason I came up with this topic is that I have gone on a few first dates this past summer, and I have obviously introduced games on some of these dates, given the fact that I have this gigantic board game collection behind me. And you can't just necessarily grab games that you like or your favorite games and think, oh, I love this game. This will be a perfect game to play. That's not usually the best. I would even argue that's usually not the best thing to do, because at least in my case, some of my favorite games are overly complex and would be the worst thing to introduce on a first date. And the other thing I do want to quickly touch on is just there's absolutely no way for me to make this video and have it be the be-all end-all and encompass and include everyone. Everyone that you meet, yourselves, other people that you go on first dates with, have new friendships with. There's no way that what I suggest here is going to work in every situation, or that anyone could create a video that would work in every situation. Human beings are all very, very unique. Everyone's going to have different likes and dislikes. You might be in a situation where you can introduce Gloomhaven on a very first date to someone and they will be enthralled by it and you'd have a great time. And in that case, I think it's pretty obvious. Marry them. So what I've done here is I've selected 6 games that I've actually had success with introducing on first dates, and there's a few different reasons why I picked these 6 games. Obviously, there's a couple cooperative games on the list. I think cooperative games are excellent choices for a first date. You guys end up working together. There's a lot of teamwork going on, which is just a good way to get to know the person, their personality and things like that. It also usually creates a lot of opportunities for just conversation and discussion, rather than just being heads down looking at your own set of cards or your own tiles or whatever the case may be. You guys are sharing information. There's a lot more communication going on. Speaking to communication, these games are ones that I think you can have conversations with and really get to know the person while you're playing without it feeling like you're being pulled away from the game or you're forgetting what's going on. I think that if you select games that have very complex rules or too much going on, rather than conversing with each other, still telling stories, still getting to know each other, you're going to end up too down in the trenches of the rules and the strategy and everything, and you're not going to get to know them better, which is usually what the first date is all about. So I tried to stray away from games that have too much complexity to them. For instance, even a game like Azul, maybe perhaps you're entering this this list and thinking, oh, Azul is a game I play with my partner and things like that, and I would agree that is a really cool game and fun game to introduce to a partner or someone you have a lot of rapport with or that you've been playing games with for a while. But for instance, on a first date, I think Azul has too much complexity going on, and I think that it can be a little mean for a first date game. But again, it all depends on the person. So I really do want to stress one more time, there's no way this is going to encompass every situation, and there's no way that my picks are going to fit every single person that you may be dating. There's just too much variability there. You could go on a date with someone and they have no interest whatsoever in board games. They even hate board games, and in which case, that's when you show them the door. Obviously, I'm just kidding, but these 6 games are ones that I have introduced on first dates and had a lot of success with. They're great, they're tons of fun. I'm going to tell you what those 6 games are and explain to you why I picked them. But one last thing before we jump into that, and all kidding aside on this, I just want to be honest with you guys for a second here. I struggled when I started dating with the fact that I have this board game collection here, the 150 games, and sort of thinking in the initial stages, what are people going to think about the fact that I am so into tabletop gaming that not only do I own 150 games, but I run or co-run a YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff, but even just the fact that I own all these board games and want to be playing board games and suggesting them, I will be the first to admit, and I don't feel this way anymore, that I did feel a little bit of embarrassment that I shouldn't have felt about, is someone going to look at this board game collection or find that, figure out that that's what I'm into and be like, oh, that's kind of nerdy or whatever. And it absolutely is nerdy. I wear that as a badge of honor now. There's nothing to be ashamed about there. But I know that I'm not the only one who has felt that with, something they're interested in, like board games or like video games or like Dungeons and Dragons. I'm thinking of like the, some nerdy things that they're not always to do with games, but these are the ones that, I can resonate with a little bit more or relate to. So I know that there's other people out there that struggle with that kind of stuff, with that anxiety and, questioning things that they're into, or not wanting to share it with people, or feeling like they have to hide parts of their interests or of themselves or of their personalities to make sure that people, get along with them in the early stages or whatever. I am guilty of that, and I was, and I've made it, huge effort to not approach new relationships and new friendships and meeting new people in that way, and rather just be proud of the things that I'm into. Because what I believe is that for every single person that you encounter in any capacity, whether that be romantically, whether that be as a friendship, whether that be a stranger, for every person that is going to look upon your interests negatively or put you down for them or shame you in some way, whether intentionally or unintentionally, for every person that exists like that, there is going to be another person that exists that is going to absolutely adore you for those qualities, that is going to love the fact that you're into board games and have a giant collection, want to play them on the first date and things like that, and is going to lift up your spirits and really just make you feel great about the things that you're interested in. So never let those things bring you down, and never think that you have to hide any part of who you are or what you're interested in to please someone else. If they're not going to be happy with who you are, you deserve someone who is going to be and is going to make you feel great for it. So honestly, just remember that you are awesome for being you, and you deserve all the love in the world. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into the games. And the very first one that we're gonna go over today is Codenames Duet. Now, this is a 2-player cooperative version of the uber popular game Codenames. At this point, tons of people have played Codenames. You might not have played the cooperative version. I'm here to tell you that it is a phenomenal choice for a first date. And the reason being, first of all, it's cooperative. Cooperative games are just always going to have, in my opinion, a bit of an edge in this specific topic, because it encourages you to work together with the person that you're meeting. You're learning about their personality, their style of play, just who they are as a person, everything. All those things come out, a lot more when you're doing something where you have to work at a common task together. You win or lose together. So when you lose together, it doesn't usually feel as bad as when one person loses. Not that one person losing feels bad, like I think at this point we're all adults, so we don't have to feel bad when we lose a game. But I think that when you lose together, you can almost make a bit of a joke out of it. You can have some fun with it, and it incentivizes you to be like, well, let's play again. Let's see if we can beat it this time. And it becomes this, achievement that you're working on together. And when you finally do win, you share in that victory, and it becomes this thing that you accomplished together, which is usually something that's way more memorable, and when you have this achievement that you're going to tie to it. And now you have that achievement on your first date, and you can really attribute it to the game that you're playing. So I think that's a huge reason. Then the other reason I want to talk about is, this is going to come up later I think, I'll tease it right now. It's going to come up later on the final game I talk about, which is my favorite one to introduce on a first date. But the eye contact in Codenames Duet is something that, I think maybe you would go over people's heads when they're thinking about a good game to pick, but I'm here to tell you that it's just, it can't be overstated how important that is. That there's tons of studies done and tons of things you can read about it, the emotional connection you get, and just like feeling connected to a person in general when you stare into each other's eyes. I know that might seem like a cliche thing, but it's true. And with Codenames Duet, I found that I'm constantly looking eye to eye with the person, especially when they're giving me the clues and saying, here's the word, here's the number. And then sometimes, even though you're not supposed to discern other extra hints, in the rules it says, the only clue you're supposed to get is the word, and beyond that, you're not supposed to use body language to figure things out or whatever. I think that if you're having fun with it, you can bend whatever rules you need to make it a little bit a better experience. But I find that I when I'm struggling to figure out what the word is, I'm looking at them, I'm looking at the words, and there was just tons of eye contact. They were finding it really funny watching me try to figure out the clues. When I pointed to one and we got it, there was the eye contact there too. So it just promoted a lot of, there was tons of smiling, there was tons of just really wholesome moments playing this game. And then obviously the other thing I'll touch on is just the fact that the mechanics are just very simple. It's super easy to teach. Games with words in general, and having to just give a single clue and things like that is just a very, safe game to introduce to any person, let alone a first date, but any person for the first time, because it's just, there's not going to be really any hang up on the rules. And even if there is on the strategy, after you play it once, everyone seems to understand the strategy after that one play, and you're probably going to end up playing it more than once, because it isn't a very long experience. Which is the last thing I'll mention, is the time to play it is very, very is that sweet spot. It's short enough that you might want to play multiple plays, but it's also not too long that it's gonna take over the entire evening, when you might want to also have some conversations or go do other things as well. So first one is Codenames Duet. I've had a really, really good success with this game. I really, really enjoy this game, period, but it has been an absolutely phenomenal game to introduce to people on first date. So that's number one. The next game we're going to look at is That's Pretty Clever. So That's Pretty Clever is not a cooperative game. It is a competitive game, but it's a roll and write. And roll and writes, I personally think, are another great option for first dates, because, one of the games that everyone knows, even if they haven't played a lot of it. If you say the game Yahtzee, I've rarely encountered someone like from North America, anyways, that I've met, like friends, strangers, coworkers, dates, whatever, that doesn't know what Yahtzee is. So roll and rights are easy to introduce because you can start by saying, it plays in a way like Yahtzee, where you roll dice and then you're using the numbers for something. That's pretty clever. Is just really bare bones in terms of rules. You're just rolling the dice, selecting one, rolling them again, selecting one, rolling them again, selecting one. There's obviously strategy that comes in with which one you're selecting, what you're doing with those numbers. And yes, the first time you play, that's pretty clever. You're not going to play anywhere near optimally as you will like 3 or 4 plays down the line. But I feel like that's not what we're going for. We're not going for, here's the games to play on a first date that you're going to play optimally, because that's not really what the first date is about. The game, I should have stressed, like if you're playing a game on a first date, it's not about the game. It's not about, can I beat this person at this game, or can I win? Like, yes, if you're playing a cooperative game, especially, you have that goal to win, but it's about getting to know the person. It's about having fun with the person. Like, that is first and foremost what you're supposed to be doing. That's pretty clever. Offers moments where, you get this amazing roll, or they get this amazing roll, which is even more important, and they have these memorable things that they can look back on and say, oh, and I remember when I snuck out that win just by rolling a 6, or whatever the case may be. And it's also fun because there is some decision making still in it. It's not just like Yahtzee, where it's like, hey, you roll a full house, you get the full house, or whatever. It's very, very straightforward what you're going for. You're always going to have multiple choices. You're always going to feel like it's not just plain itself. You're going to say, do I want to take the 6 purple at the end, or do I want to take the 6 blue? Like, they both work for me in different ways, but which one do I think, I can come back to, and which one do I want to get right now? And the chaining creates moments where when you chain things successfully in a row, especially when you do it for the first time, when you first ever played, that's pretty clever. Those kind of moments stick with you. And I think if you're introducing this game to your date, and it's the first time that they achieve this perfect chain or something like that, those are the moments they're going to look back on. Now they're going to have this fond memory from a first date. So that's pretty clever, is on here because of the ease of play, because of just the right amount of luck to create these memorable situations and memorable moments, since it's not so much about achieving the high score on a first date as it is just having fun. And it's just with the colors of the dice and the table presence and everything, it goes quick, it looks great. There's really no strikes against it. The reason I put that's pretty clever on here and not the second or the third one is I think that this one's probably the easiest and most simple to introduce to someone. They all have the same mechanics, but I think they get a little bit more complex as they go. This is probably the easiest one to introduce out of 3, in my opinion. But again, you could probably do any of the 3 depending on the person you're seeing, what their level of game understanding is, and how comfortable they are with them. But again, I love this game in general. I just think it's been really, really successful for me to introduce on the first date, and it's easy to play. You can sit on the carpet, play on a coffee table. Like, you don't have to be anywhere specific. It's not taking up a whole bunch of table space. It's just a really easy one to introduce and to carry around because it's a small one. You'll notice that with a lot of the ones I'm picking, small boxes that you can easily throw in your car or bring on a first date. Pretty much play anywhere, at a cafe, whatever. So that's pretty clever. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, next up is Cat Lady. So Cat Lady is one that I'll preface this. You might have more success introducing this to someone if they are someone who likes cats or has cats. If they are someone who really do not like cats, maybe the theme is something that deters them away a little bit, or they're going into it. You never want to judge a book by its cover, especially with board games. But people who aren't big board game fanatics don't know that when they look at a box art like Dominion, that they're going to have an amazing experience. It can sometimes set the stage the wrong way. And on a first date, or first impressions sometimes mean everything. Cat Lady, if it's a dog lover who specifically does not like cats, perhaps this is the one that's going to just set them off with the wrong first impression. All that out of the way, Cat Lady is a brilliant game. I love it. It's actually the first game we covered on the channel. Our very first video is a Cat Lady video. Just funny little fact there for you. But it's very simple, but this one probably has the most, I'm trying to think here, it might have the most strategy on this list, I would say. So I would almost say that this is one that, this isn't my first go-to to introduce, especially if I'm meeting someone I don't know that much about them yet, and I don't know how much they appreciate strategy, or how much they can handle a rule book and stuff. Everyone's very different, so it's hard. Those type of things you have to kind of keep in mind when you're introducing a game, like how much of a risk do I want to take here with how much strategy the game has, or how many rules the game has. But that being said, I think that it's really easy to understand the rules of this game. That even if you don't get the strategy, you can still have a really great time playing. You just have a 3x3 grid of cards, and you just take a row, and you get every single card in the row. And yes, the first few turns that you play this, if you've never played Cat Lady before, you're gonna potentially take too much food or too many cats, and it's gonna create a situation where you're like, oh, there's no way I'm gonna feed all these cats, or there's no way I'm gonna use all this food. But you will learn as you go, and these are tips that you can also give the person easily when you first start playing. You can play a couple practice rounds. I just think that from an aesthetic point of view, like, it's just such a cute game. It's gonna garner a really good reaction when you bring it to the table. No matter who the person is, I think it's gonna be one that just puts a little bit of a smile on your face. It's easy in terms of like what a turn is. A turn is just select a row of cards, so you don't have to think about like, here's 5 phases to your turn or anything like that. Like, it's very, very simplistic that way. The thematics are really cool and really funny, and I think people can relate to, even if they don't have cats. Collecting all the different types of cat toys and what those cat toys are, and having to feed the cat specific things. You're gonna also, I think, have a lot of fun with the person just reading off the cat names. All the cat names in this game are really, really funny and have like really interesting correlation to what some of the cat abilities are, especially for the ones that you can't remember what they're called, the stray cats. Those will have names that apply to their abilities in different ways. So I think there's a lot of stuff that you're gonna be smiling at the table about as you sort of admire the box art and the game itself. And if you're someone who, like, you're going on a first date and you love strategy and board games, but again, you're not wanting to introduce too much of it on first date, this might be like the compromise of like, there's still a decent amount of strategy to keep you fulfilled in playing a board game, but it's also easy to introduce, and it's not going to be too overwhelming for the person you're introducing it to if they are not as familiar with board game strategy. So this wouldn't be my first pick out of the 6 I'm giving here. Like, it might even be my number 6. I didn't order these in any specific order, but it might be like the last one I'd recommend of these 6. But I still think it's a phenomenal choice, especially if the person you're introducing it to loves cats. I think it's just going to be a hit right from the go from seeing the box. So that is a Cat Lady. The next one that we're going to talk about, though, is a game called Hanabi. So Hanabi plays 2 to 5, I believe it is, but obviously we're talking about specifically 2 in this case. So if you want, I was talking about cooperative games with Codenames Duet. This is a cooperative game. There's gonna be one more on this list. So I'm not gonna reiterate the reasons why I think cooperative games are good, but in this specific case, it's cooperative where you are really helping each other more. In Codenames Duet, it's cooperative, but you're working towards the same goal, and you're helping someone with a single clue, and they just have to do what they can with that clue, and then that's where the fun comes out of it, and the hilarity and things like that. With Hanabi, there is strategy in the clues that you're giving, but you're constantly giving different types of information, and everything about your opponent's hand, and they know everything about your hand, but you don't know your own hand. You're holding the cards with the hand facing the other person. So having a situation where I know my entire date's hands of cards, and they know mine, it's this interesting. It's a different type of cooperative game that I think lends itself to a first date, because I know everything that you have going on in your hand, and I have to really help you out and say, you have this 2 of this color, you have 2 of this number, whatever the case may be, and you're doing the same for me. And that sense of help and that sense of really helping the other person accomplish what you want them to do is just so great for a first date. Like, I feel like I'm not wording this in the best way possible. The right words are escaping me, but I just think this specific type of cooperative game is one that you're probably gonna have a lot of fun with, and it will give you, it'll tell you a lot about the person's personality too. How well can they, withhold information, because you're really not supposed to give more information other than the clue. You might point to a card and say you have 1 red card or whatever, but when I go to discard a card, if I'm discarding one that you see is one that we shouldn't discard for what we're trying to do, you might have this you might have this feeling of wanting to go, oh no, right? And you're not technically supposed to do that. Again, if you're playing in a date environment, like, it's not that big of a deal if anyone's going to make these little slip-ups and stuff like that. Like, just roll with it. It's all about having fun. But again, I think it's just going to create these moments where, that's going to create a lot of laughs and everything amongst the 2 people that are playing. And, you're really it's just the sense of helping each other out that I think just lends itself to this kind of environment. So there's not really a whole lot more to say about Hanabi. I guess the one other thing I'll mention is, obviously, this is, I think, the smallest box out of everything I'm showing here today. So this is one you can even throw in your pocket. So if you're going over to someone's house, for a first date or to a out for coffee at like a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons, wherever the cool kids go for coffee these days. I said Tim Hortons, so if you're not from Canada, you're probably like, what is Tim Hortons? But Dunkin' Donuts, or I don't know what the popular, I shouldn't have even, I don't even know what the popular coffee shops are in enough places in the world to try to say them all now. If you go to your favorite local coffee shop, what I should have said in the beginning, this is one you can easily just play at the table, you know, throw in your pocket and stuff like that. So it's just an easy one to carry around, which I think is important when we're talking about first date games, because first dates can happen in a park and you want to have something that works. So that is Hanabi. I would really recommend this one. It's cooperative. It's really fun. The theme's great. The colors are great. Yeah, check it out. Okay. Next one, and this is the last one before my absolute favorite one, which I'm really excited to talk about. So this one is Patchwork. Patchwork is one of my favorite games to play with 2 players, period. But I think it's actually one of the best games to play on a first date. And that's because, mostly, honestly, because the theme is just so calming, peaceful, and it really is a game that encourages you to just talk about whatever you want while you're playing. There is strategy going on, but I find that even when I play Patchwork with someone that hasn't played before, whether that be a friend on a date, whatever the case may be, there's this element of strategy you can start to get to with Patchwork where you start to think like 3 turns ahead, and you say, here's the ring of tiles that that we're slowly picking from. You can pick 3 tiles ahead of wherever the marker currently is, and so you might say, well, if I pick this one, then they are gonna have to one of those to pick, which means that on my next turn I would have these to pick, and I really want that tile. And so you really start to think way ahead. I find that when I play Patchwork with someone that hasn't played before, I don't even find myself using that depth of strategy. And it's not that I'm holding back. It's not that I'm trying to go easy on the person. It's just that that's not usually what it's about. It's more about just having fun and just, enjoying what is really a pretty simplistic and just beautiful experience. And for a first date specifically, it's not about how can I most optimally crush my opponent. It's more about introducing to this game, hoping that they enjoy it, and having conversation while we're playing. And Patchwork is one that in between your turns, the amount of times I've just had conversations or gone on a tangent into a story or had them share a story, and then we go, okay, let's go back to the game. And we don't have to try to catch up to what's going on. As long as you remember whose turn it is, it's really easy to jump back into. It is just a calm game that you can sit and play with, a coffee or a beer or wine or whatever. Enjoy it. It looks great on the table. And the theme is something that I think everyone is completely comfortable with. You don't have to worry about, is this theme too violent, or is this theme going to resonate, or will they have an interest? It's buttons and quilts. Like it's super, super easy. I have never introduced this game on a date. I say it's not like I've been on 12 dates or anything like that, but I've never introduced this at a date the times that I have introduced it and had it not be a really successful hit. And I've actually had people buy it. I feel like I should just be going on dates just to, as a Patchwork salesman, as a way to just get extra sales for them, and maybe they should hire me to do that. That'd be great. But it's just a really, really fun experience. I as I've mentioned in other videos, I'm a huge fan of Uwe Rosenberg games, and I really do love polyomino games. The specific reason Patchwork is on this list over games like My City, for instance, which is another one that I know that from personal experience that there are friends of mine that play it with their partner and absolutely adore My City. Unfortunately, that with being a legacy game is probably not at all the best game to introduce on a first date, because you have to start a legacy component, and who knows if there's going to be a second date, right? Like you're learning that as part of the experience of the date to see if you're compatible with the person. So Patchwork, is just a really quick experience. It's not the quickest one on this list. I think that it's probably shorter than Cat Lady, maybe. I don't even know for sure. It's not like the point being, it's not a very long experience. I think when I played this last time on a first date, it was like, if I took out all the talking and stuff we did in between turns and things like that, it was probably half an hour. It's a really easy one to fit in, and it's one that if you have a really good time with it, you can play again. So, and the strategy is also it's not one of those games, and I should have mentioned this with some of the other games, or even at the beginning of the video, another really important thing with introducing a game, not only on a first date, but even just to friends and things like that, is if you're playing 2 players specifically, if you introduce a game that I have, like say I introduce a game and there's a huge edge in this game, if you've already played, there's a good chance that the game I introduce, I'm going to win. If they are playing for the first time, and if I inherently have an edge by knowing the rules and knowing the strategy, they might have a not great experience by the fact that they just feel at a disadvantage the entire game. So on a first date specifically, that can be a really lousy feeling to have on a first date. It's going to leave them with an impression that is, not what you want someone to have on a first date. So the games I'm picking here, I think, are ones that either because they're cooperative or either because they're not uber competitive, that it's okay that, I play Patchwork dozens and dozens of times. I can play it and I don't feel like I am at an overly high advantage over my opponent. Yes, I'm sure that there is a little bit of an advantage there, but because it's such a calming game and because I'm not going like really, really deep into the strategy when I play it, I've lost on a first date before. So take with that what you will. Either I'm really bad at Patchwork or it's just a really good option for a first date. But that is Patchwork. Many of you probably expected it to be on this list just because I know lots of people who have introduced this game on dates, so this is nothing new, but it's a great option. All right, the last game we're going to talk about, this is one I'm excited to talk about. This is my favorite game to introduce on a first date, and maybe this is going to come as a surprise to you. I'm going to explain to you why I picked it. That is The Mind, okay? So The Mind is, first of all, The Mind is a brilliant, brilliant game. We've covered it on this channel before. I love it. I think that it is genius, and it's really, really hard for me to explain to you what makes it so great, because it's not in the rules that are in the rule book. It's in the rules you develop, if this makes sense, with the group you're specifically playing with. The mind changes depending who you are playing the game with. I may play with friend number one, and friend number one might have this tendency to just be really overly confident about the cards in their hand and think like, oh, if I have a 13 in my hand, that's got to be the lowest card, and just try to play it and not even think that, hang on, like hesitate for a moment because I might have a 6 and I need to play that first. And you have to learn that about them. You have to learn the speed at which they play and what their tendencies are and tells that they might give without realizing they're giving those tells. And every person's going to be different. So every time I play the mind with a different group of people, or even just a couple different people, I have to relearn the game in a way. And it's so satisfying to play a couple games of the mind, see yourself getting better, and then know that you have to do that all again with a different group of people because everybody's different. So what makes that type of game so perfect in a first date environment is you are going to be working with them, first of all, in a cooperative environment. So you're going to win or lose together. All the cooperative things I mentioned before apply. But you are really going to learn some tendencies about the person that you're on a date with. And they're going to learn about you, like how quick you are to make decisions, how hesitant you are to make decisions and things like that. And more than that, the most important thing about the mind on a first date, the reason I love it, is you spend so much time eyes locked, looking at the person, trying to read their mind. And it's crazy for me to try to, articulate this, but by the end of playing, the last time I played this on a date, we played 2 games back to back. And I just want to mention, on the second game we played, we got through all 12 levels of a 2-player game with 2 lives remaining. That has got to be like, call Guinness World Records, because that is a huge accomplishment, in my book anyways. So we played 2 games of this back to back. And the progression of how much more in tune with each other we got by the end of that second game, how much more we were anticipating each other's choices or what cards were in each other's hands. We started to make this game of it where, whenever we use one of the throwing stars and we're each going to reveal the lowest card, we both try to guess what that card was going to be first based on what we thought the lowest card was and why we chose to use the throwing star. The amount of moments we had where, she played a 40 and I had the 41 and we both were wanting to play, and we were able to sort of like lock eyes with each other, think about it for like 10 seconds, just staring at each other, and then for me to back off and kind of just let her play the card, and for us to be right. It's so satisfying, and you really do feel like you're getting closer to the person. Like, it's really hard for me to explain without you having tried this, but the mind as a game in and of itself makes you feel very close to the people you're playing with. Like, that is what it does. It makes you feel in tune and in touch with them on a mental level. And so on a first date, what more could you ask for? That is the perfect thing, especially if you like the person, especially if it's going well. Now you get to spend a lot more time staring into that person's eyes, feeling more connected with them, and actually having that connection be rewarded and validated in how you're doing in the game. I cannot stress enough how successful this game was in just like really having really fun and connected first dates. Again, it's not one that the theme isn't necessarily screaming date. It's got this weird little bunny on it. I think I talked about it in our how to play or in our review, but how like I don't really know what the theme is of this game. The theme is bunny, apparently, but it's also really easy to introduce. Like the rules are really simple, and they're so simple that someone's gonna be confused and say, I don't quite understand. And I will let you know, the first time you play with a brand new person, you're probably not going to do that great on the first game because you don't know anything about them if it's a first date, and you have to figure out each other's tendencies and you know, how you play and a little bit about your personality as you go to do better. So you are going to want to play it more than once. Do not just play this once. If you just play it once, you might leave it saying, well, that makes me feel less connected to this person. Let it snowball into another game, and as you start to feel more connected, both of you are going to feel very rewarded by it. Again, I cannot stress how much I love this game on a first date. I think that it is a phenomenal choice, and it's super cheap. You can go pick this up for like, I think it's like $10 or something like that. So it's not even, doesn't even require much of an investment. You could, if you're like, I was thinking about a game to play on the first day anyways, you can go and stop into a board game store on your way there, drive over, pick it up, throw it in your pocket, and pop over, and you're good to go. So that is that is my last game we're going to talk about today, and it's also my favorite. They were in an order from like least favorite to favorite, but I did leave the best for last in my opinion. So there you have it. Those are the 6 games. Again, I know I've really said this is more times than I need to, but there's no way that this is going to work for everybody, these 6 games. You know, these are just 6 games that I specifically think are great choices. And oh my God, look at the way that these are precariously. There we go. There we go. So yeah, again, these 6 games are ones that I think are really great to introduce, a great option, but it's not going to work for everybody. And you might not even personally like these games or want to introduce games that you don't like. And you might be like, well, I hate Hanabi, so why would I introduce it? Obviously, don't introduce it if you don't like it. But yeah, let me know in the comments, which games have you had success introducing on first dates, or even just with your partner and things like that. And which of these games, you know, did you hear the description on? Now you're going to go want to pick up and try it out for yourself. Another thing I'll mention is this. I know this was all about sort of the first date experience. That's sort of the perspective I'm coming from currently in my life. But Carlo, who, you know, just actually became a dad. So if you didn't know that, if you didn't know that Carlo just became a dad, put a little congratulations in the comments for him. He does read the comments. He does go in, especially when he has less time now and he's got a baby in his arms. He's looking at the comments and responding to some. Give him a little congratulations if you heard me say this. But he's going to be doing a video sometime in the future that will actually come at this from the perspective of not a first date, but just couple games, like what games you want to play with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, your husband, your partner of any kind, and you know that you might already have a rapport with. You might want some more strategy added in, or whatever the case may be. So he's gonna have a video that looks at it from that perspective. This was specifically from the first date perspective. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was a little bit of a different one for me, because I'm pulling for a lot from personal experiences of the last like 3 or 4 months. But you know, I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it. So let me know in the comments what you thought. And otherwise, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.